I am pleased to follow my friend and colleague from Vermont, Senator Sanders, and I want to begin by thanking him for his leadership, his persistence, and his perseverance in the face of resistance that should not exist. This cause ought to be one that galvanizes the nation. And perhaps it will, since the nation has been appalled and astonished by reports of not only cooking the books, but covering up that potential criminality, destruction of documents, falsification of records, secret waiting lists, delays that are unacceptable and intolerable for healthcare, basic, necessary healthcare that our veterans need. But these issues are longstanding, decades old in our Veterans Affairs Health Administration. They are endemic to the system. In fact, they reflect systematic failings that are longstanding in this system, and they need to be addressed with system-wide reform. I am strongly in support, and proudly so, in advocating the Ensuring Veterans Access to Health Care Act that Senator Sanders has just introduced. It is a version of the omnibus bill and other measures that have been introduced. It has essential features that will provide better health care sooner, more accessibly to our veterans. It is necessary to pass, but it should have passed these kinds of provisions literally years ago. In fact, the very first piece of legislation I introduced in the Senate, Senate 1060, called Honoring All Veterans Act, included a provision, for example, to deal with the shortage of doctors in this system. It included other healthcare related measures to expand the availability and accessibility of healthcare. These problems, far from new, have been existent for some time, and the cover-up, the lying, and falsification of records is potentially now criminal. Beyond a failure of public policy, it is a failure in integrity. I'm pleased to join Senator Sanders to make sure that the 9.3 million of the nation's 22 millions who are enrolled in the VA healthcare system, which is up from about 2.5 million at the end of the first Gulf War, have the kind of service they need. And this bill will address some basic needs. It provides authority to remove senior executives based on poor job performance and preventing wholesale political firings. The legislation would provide veterans who can't get timely appointments access to private clinics and the option of going to community healthcare centers, military hospitals, or private doctors. And it would authorize the Veterans Administration to lease 27 new health facilities in 18 states, including funds for the enhanced lease of the Aurora Community Care Center in West Haven, Connecticut, which does profoundly important and excellent work. The legislation authorizes emergency funding to hire new doctors and nurses and other providers in order to address system-wide healthcare provider shortages and to take other necessary steps to ensure timely access to care. And it addresses the healthcare primary care shortage for the long term as well by authorizing the National Health Service Corps to award scholarships to medical school students and to forgive college loans for doctors and nurses who work at the VA. These kinds of measures and others in the bill will act to fulfill our basic obligation to our veterans, just as I did or attempted to do in the Honoring All Veterans Act some years ago, and others have joined since in seeking to do. And my hope is that we can reach across the aisle. In fact, I'm working with Senator McCain on a letter, a bipartisan letter to the Attorney General urging all possible involvement and leadership in a criminal investigation. I hope the similar spirit of bipartisanship will enable us to work with Senators McCain and Burr and Coburn on their Veterans Choice Act and combine these measures, enlist them in supporting bipartisan solution. And I joined Senator Sanders in hoping for that bipartisan effort in this measure, because there's no question the VA budget has grown, but simply has failed to keep pace with surging demands, especially in mental health services and primary care. Too many of our veterans coming home with serious mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, need the care that we owe them. And we need accountability. Part of it will be firing the officials who should be held responsible, but part of it may be also prosecuting them. And that's the reason that I have asked the Attorney General to take the lead, to assume much more immediate and significant involvement in any criminal investigation that may be necessary. In fact, there is credible and significant evidence of criminal wrongdoing here. The Department of Justice must be involved and, in my view, must take a leadership role, and that's the reason that Senator McCain and I have joined in a letter that we are seeking support for our colleagues to send that would request the Attorney General to take such steps. Only the Attorney General has the resources, expertise, and authority, along with the FBI, to do a prompt and effective criminal investigation. Only the Department of Justice can convene a grand jury and take other necessary steps. Only the FBI can bring to bear the expertise as well as the resources. The Inspector General of the Veterans Administration has only 165 investigators for the entire nation. This investigation now spans more than 40 centers where criminality has been alleged. Of the 216 sites visited by the auditors recently, many were found to have issues of scheduling practice defects and potential integrity problems. So there is a reason for the VA Inspector General to not only consult with the Department of Justice, but also involve the Department of Justice in an active leadership role here, and for the acting Secretary of the VA to request that involvement, which I hope he will do. I commend what he's done so far, but now is the time for the Department of Justice to be involved in leading. The audit of the facilities around the country ought to be made public, not just the overall results, which have been delivered to the President in a report last Friday, but all of the results, site-specific results for locations. For example, the 2 hospitals in Connecticut, in West Haven and in Newington, as well as the 6 medical centers in Connecticut. All those site-specific audits should be made public. I've written to the acting secretary, Sloan Gibson, urging that he make public those face-to-face audits of VA medical facilities, not only for Connecticut, but for the whole country. Restoring trust and credibility will be achieved only if there's more transparency. Non-disclosure would be a bad way to begin a new era of leadership at the VA. And full transparency is absolutely vital to help restore trust and confidence, which has been so gravely threatened and indeed undermined. Finally, let me say about Secretary Shinseki. The immediate challenge is not about replacing one person. It is about fixing a system that is desperately wrong. I respect, and deeply so, Secretary Shinseki's decision to resign last week after concluding that his continued service would be a distraction from the urgent and necessary overhaul of the Veterans Administration. I respect even more his dedicated service to our nation. He is a decorated combat veteran who has led into battle many of the men and women who now use the Veterans Administration. His mentors and models, as he so eloquently told our committee, now use the Veterans Administration. I believe in his heart he's passionately committed to the cause of serving our veterans. And he deserved gratitude and respect from the American people for his service in the United States military and his telling truth to power as the president so powerfully observed. The nation must recognize that it owes to our veterans world-class, first-class medical care, second to none, putting them to risk in medical facilities after they have put their lives at risk in the battlefield is a disservice to them and to our nation. It is abhorrent and atrocious that there have been these potentially criminal acts, destruction of documents and falsification of records at many VA facilities around the country. There's no excuse for it. Whether it's arbitrary deadlines or timelines, there is simply no excuse for that kind of lying. And it is lying not only to General Shinseki, but to the American people that has happened within the VA. And the ones who committed that kind of wrongdoing should be held accountable administratively and criminally. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and the ongoing global military operations since 9/11 have cast a long shadow in this nation's history. They have involved less than 1% of the population, including the families of the brave warriors who have been sent to battle. But we will live, all of us, with the consequences, and all of us have an obligation to them to keep faith with them, to leave no veteran behind, to give them prompt and world-class, first-class medical care when they need it right away. The greatest generation set a model for them, and they are indeed the next greatest generation. We have to do right by them as they have done right by us. For all veterans, no matter what the era, what the conflict, what the war, let us keep faith with all of them and leave no veteran behind.